Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Information Tuesday. Today we have our friend from the Pennyrile area, Amanda Stokes. Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you for your topic.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share today. The first thing I want to talk to you about is our case management transportation training that we developed. We worked directly with Dale in developing this training for our case managers. Dale was great about offering some assistance and clarification to us on some questions that we had to make sure that we got our staff properly trained. We do have that form to share today. It is the transportation training form. With this particular form, we started utilizing this as of August 1st and provided this training to our staff members. We have now required that with their case notes, that they document their transportation time within the case note. In seeking out clarification from Dale, we developed several scenarios of what a typical case manager might encounter during a day out on the road and tried to work those into scenarios so that we could see the travel or transportation time that would be associated with those. So I do have several scenarios that you can see below. Basic things such as leaving your office or home and traveling to a client's home and capturing that transportation time. Scenario B goes into traveling from one home to the next home and how we would log that time so that whenever you leave, that time is associated with the first client from your office or home to that client. And then that travel time to the next client is associated with that client B in that example. We did go a little more complex with some of our scenarios just based on some of the situations our case managers gave us for examples as to if I encounter this, how would I log this transportation time? So scenario C, for example, is if you leave your home or office and you're traveling from client A to client B, and then you have that time and you're traveling back, that's a total of 30 minutes for client B in that scenario. Scenario D talks about senior housing. That's very common in our area that we might have several clients assigned to one case manager within senior housing. Well, we know when you live in one apartment complex, you're not going to have a lengthy amount of transportation time associated with each client. So what we received clarification from Mondale was that you would account for the time it took you to walk from one resident to the next resident's apartment within that complex. So for example, you might have 1-2 minutes of transportation time for somebody in senior housing when you're visiting several of those in one day, depending on the elevator, stairs, things like that. So it might be 2 or 3 minutes in between those, but that's how we account for that. The next scenario, scenario E, talked about that our case managers, 5 out of our 6 are personal service case managers, our contractors. So they're set up with home offices. So they account for their day out on the road. They work from home, and they might take breaks during the day while they're out. They might stop and have lunch or stop and take a break, things like that. So we wanted to account for that in the next scenario, that you're not charging or documenting any of that transportation time to a client if it's associated with a personal time of yours, a break. And there was one more scenario since we had developed this tool that we had requested Dale's clarification on. We do unfortunately set up a lot of visits and sometimes even assessments or reassessments with clients. We'll have a case manager to drive out to that home to make contact with that client. You'll stand there, you'll knock at the door for several minutes, you'll try to get somebody to come to the door, and you determine that they're not home. So in that scenario, Dale has clarified to us that we would be able to charge or document our transportation time in the form of units, and we would need to log that in a case note as an attempted visit or attempted reassessment. We couldn't be able to document the time that we stood there at the door, like if you were at the door for 3 or 4 minutes knocking. We wouldn't be able to put that in as units, but we could still put the units in for that transportation time. So that's another clarification that was really helpful from Dale in working with that. We have had a few more situations come up since we implemented this in August. I know we have had a couple of case managers that have encountered an excessive amount of transportation time compared to normal due to getting caught at railroad tracks, to road detours, to construction work on the roads, things like that. So what we've done is just made sure that they make a special note on another form that we have to show that that time was different than normal because of a specific situation that they encountered. So for us, this tool has worked really well. Like I said, our case managers implemented this in August. It's been a learning experience for them, but it's worked out really well. And we'll continue to build on this training tool and potential scenarios that case managers encounter as we go on throughout the process. Another tool that we have that Dale has asked us to share today is our case management tracking tool. We've actually been using a version of this form since 2011. Originally, when we developed it, we submitted it to Dale for feedback and approval and received that. It was used as a form that our case managers would document all of their client contacts on, and it was like a backup system for them. So they would log their daily accounts of home visits, telephone calls, reassessments, whatever it might be, and have a running record of that on paper, and would transfer those units over into SAMS in a roster. This allowed them to have a backup system and a way to double check too to make sure that all units got entered. They could tally up all the units on the paper tracking system and make sure that that matched the total in SAMS. So since we implemented tracking our transportation time, and also we were given permission by Dale to expand what case management units captured, we added a couple extra columns into this form to modify it for our current use. So if you'll notice over on column 5, the 5th column, we've added a section in there for transportation where we can show, for example, that one that I did shows Jane Doe on October the 16th received an assessment. We documented the units for the actual time spent with the client, 30 minutes of transportation time, and then we have that 6th column that allows you to total the units up for that particular day. This seems to work better for us with expanding this tool to make sure that we are capturing not only the direct time with the client, but also that transportation time. For purposes of training for our case managers, we have this sample where we've documented things like service initiation, the plan of care development, and even the case note entry. We do allow our case managers to have some flexibility with this form. So I have a couple of case managers who like to be able to total the units up per client. So for Jane Doe, at the bottom of her units there, they would actually capture and calculate a grand total for her units and just make sure that that matches the grand total that shows in the SAMS roster. Some of our case managers don't like that grand total, and it seems to be more confusing for them and thinking that they haven't entered something in SAMS that they should have. So we do allow that flexibility. Below that is John Doe and John Smith, just a couple more examples of how we capture things like our telephone calls and our home visits documented in there. With this particular spreadsheet, it also does have plenty of room on there for our case managers to document special situations that they might encounter with transportation. So if they did encounter a detour that day and on their way to a client's house, and it caused them to have to travel an extra 15 minutes than what it normally would traveling to that client's house, I've just instructed them to try to make a special note underneath that transportation just to document that there was a detour or something like that. And that way it would draw our attention to it if anything ever came in the future as to questioning that amount of time compared to the normal time. Also with this form, our case managers complete it monthly, and then at the beginning of the following month when they're in the office, they submit this form to me. I also use it for internal monitoring process. I will tally up all the units by case manager, and I go into SAMS and verify that as well to make sure that those are the units that are showing in the SAMS roster. Also, it's great if you have a new case manager or you're implementing some type of new process to be able to use this tool as well, so that you can go in and randomly select a few people on the list, go into SAMS, pull up the journal record for their case notes, and make sure that it corresponds with what they've put on the sheet and entered in the SAMS roster. So for us, this has worked out really well. It helps the case manager stay on track to make sure that they don't miss anything during the month. It helps them to better capture that transportation to make sure that we're not overlooking that now as being able to be entered in the units. And it's great for our internal monitoring processes as well. So I feel like this form is good. And like I said, we do allow that flexibility with those case managers to use it in the way that works best for them. And we take that in on a monthly basis and go through it all. And so, again, this process has worked well for us. It was great working with Dale and getting feedback from them and approval before we implemented that. If there are any specific questions, I know that you can reach out to Dale, or if there's something in particular you have a question for me, you're more than welcome to send me an email, and I'll try to be of assistance with that. Thank you all so much.
Amanda, thank you very much. And what we'll do is when we put out this link, we will make sure that we have the email addresses for both Dale and for Amanda. We'll see you next week on Information Tuesday. Thank you all.